Hello everyone. This Bevan Exemplar project was undertaken within Howdar University Health Board, and during the programme has come to be known as the Waiting List Support Service Pilot. I'm Mandy Davies, and I'm one of the Assistant Directors of Nursing in Howdar University Health Board, and I'm responsible for quality improvement across the Health Board. And I'm delivering this presentation with my colleague, Tom Alexander, who is the Principal Project Manager and has been project managing the pilot.
So, just with regard to the background and aims of the pilot, there are really two main drivers behind it. The first driver being the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on planned surgery waiting times. So in Howdar, and I think nationally, they've increased significantly. And the waiting list support service was developed really in response to this, for those that were waiting, and to provide some compassionate and proactive communication with them, really. And the second driver was around Howdar Health Board's strategic planning priorities, one of which said that we needed to develop a process to maintain personalised contact with all of our patients that were currently waiting for elective care. And that was so that we could keep them informed of their wait, offer a single point of contact rather than multiple points, provide advice on self-management and symptom deterioration, etc. So that was really the background and aims to the pilot, and we wanted to develop a process which could deliver on these.
So in order to try and test what processes we needed to develop to deliver that planning objective, we decided to do a pilot with a small cohort of patients to deliver a single telephone number, a single email contact point, and to give them some information and resources that would help them while they were waiting for their elective surgery, and to help them to maintain their health and well-being while they were waiting. So we worked with 3 orthopaedic consultants to identify a cohort of patients that were waiting for hip and knee surgery, and we identified 264 patients that we then wrote to. We sent them a letter that we developed with Bevan through a behavioural workshop, and we wrote to them, and in the letter we identified and signposted them to some online resources that have been specifically developed with the clinicians for patients that were waiting for hip and knee. So they were dietary advice, well-being advice, exercise advice, and they could access that by either directly going to the web page or using the QR code that was in the letter. We then identified a number of nurses that were usually worked in pre-assessment services, and so were well versed in dealing with patients that were waiting for elective surgery. And we developed their role in being call handlers. So we set a specific telephone number up that we communicated to the patients in the letter, and the call handlers then waited for patients to call, and when they rang, they followed a specific script that enabled us to be able to guide patients through thinking about what they may need while they were waiting. It helped them to answer any questions, and also helped the patients to identify things that they may need further support for. And the nurses then were able to guide patients to additional services or additional resources and help those patients to meet their needs while they were waiting. The resources that were made available were, as I said, were bespoke. So they were specifically developed for this cohort of patients, and they were available bilingually. And there was also a video that patients could go to the website and watch. And Tom will give you some feedback on what the outcome and what the response to that website was on the next couple of slides.
Our evaluation covered both qualitative and quantitative data, and we captured a number of impacts. So we captured some evaluation data around call handling metrics, around the website usage, and around the patient experience. The main findings were that 25% of our pilot cohort used the website that we developed, the specialized website that we developed, and only around 6%, that's 16 out of the 264 patients involved in our pilot, used the telephone line for additional information. Again, with regard to the website, there were, as I said, 84 hits, which works out to about 25% of people in the pilot used the web page. And they had an average stay of actually 4 minutes, which is twice as long as normal site views to how our website pages. And 27% of those people were patients returning to that platform. So they'd used the website once and gone back to it, which was quite interesting. In terms of efficiencies, the medical secretaries whose patients were involved in our pilot during the pilot recorded about 50 to 60% fewer calls, and the calls that they did have were much more relevant. So, for example, they often had calls around booking an appointment for a consultant for a change in symptoms rather than something around waiting list times. For patient experience, we use the national PREM dataset, which is the patient reported experience measured dataset. And there are a number of questions on that came out generally positive. So we showed a generally positive patient experience, and again, which was really interesting and helped us form some key lessons learned going forward. So one of the lessons learned that we found was around patient experience feedback. So patients tended to feedback on their whole waiting list experience rather than just their experiences with our waiting list support line. We also learned that around 75% of the calls that we received were related to pain and pain management. And there was a lesson learned there going forward that an opportunity perhaps existed to develop more of an online resource around pain specifically, or develop more information within the script of the call handlers. The other lesson we learned was around the actual call handlers themselves. We had nurses that were redeployed to work on this particular project. And they were really skilled in speaking to patients that came through. Often patients would ring up just with a query around the waiting list, but actually in talking to those nurses, they unearthed a number of different issues with which to work with that patient on. You know, for example, medication management or pain management. So that skill and knowledge was really key to that call handling position, and we take that forward. And finally, the advice on the website, we actually located under COVID-19 website information, which may have caused confusion for anyone landing on the website and looking for some orthopedic specific advice. So next time we develop website advice and information, we'd potentially put it under a specific orthopedic or another service advice.
So next steps. After completing the pilot, we've been successful in getting funding to roll out the waiting list support service across other specialties. And we're currently recruiting a team of clinicians and managerial staff and administrative staff and call handlers so that we can roll the project out at pace across other elective waiting lists. We're currently working with clinicians to identify which cohort of patients that we'll start with, and to identify where we'll get the biggest benefit and which patients would benefit most from getting this offer of support. And some of that will be around what information we can develop that will help people while they're waiting, and further develop specific information for their condition and their planned surgery, but also to try and reduce the risk for some patients that for whilst they're waiting. We're anticipating that as an added bonus from the project, that we'll be able to consider and identify alternative pathways, which is the real benefit for patients in the longer term. So our experiences of delivering an innovative change and being on a Bevan Exemplar is we got a lot of support from Bevan to deliver the project. We had, as part of the work in developing the letter and also the script that the call handlers used, we had a behavioural change workshop with Bevan, which we all benefited from, and we involved a lot more people than the people that attended the Bevan Exemplar. So it was really, really beneficial in terms of making sure that we got the right information and we got the letter and collected the information that we collected to evaluate the project. Although the virtual format, because of the COVID restrictions, was challenging, we were able to attend. It was accessible, and the sessions were well paced and really well delivered. The timescales were a bit challenging in terms of trying to do the project and get some outcomes so that we could feedback and demonstrate that we'd use the programme in the best way that we can. But actually the timescales actually made us evaluate and made us really think about getting the pilot done and evaluating it and being able to feedback to the organisation. There was a huge amount of benefit of networking with the other colleagues that were on the programme, and though we couldn't do this face to face, it was really useful talking about our projects to other people and other people giving us feedback. It would, I think, have been beneficial if we'd been able to work in groups, which we probably would have if we attended the programme in person, because it was often difficult to sort of really understand what progress people were making with their projects and feeding back on the progress we were making as we were moving through the project, because often you were working with different people at each event. We had really great external mentorship support from an exec from another health board, and that was really, really beneficial to test what we were doing around the pilot. We developed a lot of relevant project skills. As I've said, we did some behavioural change workshops, which we found particularly beneficial, and we wouldn't have been able to get that if we hadn't been on the Bevan Exemplar programme. So we really appreciated that. And as always with Bevan Exemplar programmes, the project brought great engagement from clinicians and executive teams, and it gave us a platform to get engagement for the project, and has really moved us on in terms of getting the funding for rolling out the project to a wider group of patients. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions.
We will now have a Q&A discussion. In the future rollout of this, is there scope for a wider range of services to get involved?
I think, to be honest, Tom, we've only just started, and I think what we've done is just saying, have we got a process where people that we can respond to patients if we make them an offer, and I think that is exactly where we need to go, because you know the scope of the challenge is so big that we can't necessarily do it on our own, and we need to really explore what the alternatives to the current traditional pathways are, and is there, you know, and really this is our opportunity to map patients' journeys through an elective pathway from the point at which it's identified that they need to be referred or seen to the point that they finish receive their elective treatment. So I think, and if we map that out for individual cohorts of patients and conditions, then we'll understand a lot more about where and when people can be involved in their care. and and also identify where the maximum benefit would be.
Have you discussed with other health boards how they might be doing similar things and what you may be able to share with each other?
I haven't. We can do, but it's probably important to. And everybody, but I think the key thing to that, Tom, is that everybody is doing something different. So, if you're a patient in Wales on a waiting list, you're going to get a different, So I think it is important that we sort of look at how we're going to pull out the best practice from all of those into some sort of central place, because it's about equity, and also patients knowing what they can expect.
What is the role of communicating to service users what they can expect?
Yeah, and I think this was aimed at being kind and compassionate and recognising that, it's not unusual to have that, but we had a big gap between when we would be able to clear our waiting list. But it was also, but I think it became very clear it was much more complicated than just reaching out. It's much more complicated now. You've got to have something that offers something, that gives people something that they can either work with, or that they feel as if somebody's listening to them and understands what their needs are. It's not just, we know you're there sort of offer.
What advice would you give to future Bevan exemplars?
So Bevan, next generation of Bevan exemplars, take advantage of every opportunity that they offer. I don't think you often recognise what people are actually offering, and actually that I think sometimes it seems like it's going to be challenging, but actually if you follow what Bevan suggests you do as part of the programme, though it doesn't make sense at the beginning why you're doing it and how you're doing it, I think by the end, if you have a go, then you can always see something that's useful for the project. And if I was going to give any advice to somebody that was going to pick up work on a single point of contact, so working on their waiting list, it's like trust your instincts. I think we weren't confident enough about what we thought we already knew about what patients might need. The pain issue was the obvious one. We're thinking, oh no, we'll wait and find out and see what they say they need. But actually, we already know, and we should probably trust our instincts a little bit more.
Yeah, just something for me around the profile that the Bevan Commission can give projects as well. So that's really useful particularly when you're engaging or you're wanting to roll out further. Being a Bevan Commission project and highlighting that with key stakeholders is something that really helps when you're engaging and helps to develop projects further if you want to. So yeah, that was the only thing I'd add to that probably.